I'd like to call this hearing to order, and certainly want to thank those of you who are serving as our witnesses today. And I do apologize that we're, I guess, over an hour and a half late or close to it. So thank you for your patience. And as you know, we do have difficulty with controlling time up here, and we were voting on the floor. So we do value your being here, and we look forward to your testimony on this important subject. Today's hearing is entitled U.S. Energy Abundance, Manufacturing Competitiveness, and America's Energy Advantage. So I know that this is going to be extremely disappointing for you all, and I'm sorry to say this, but we're not going to have any opening statements up here. So we're going to go right directly to you and listen to your opening statements. So each one of you will be given 5 minutes. And this is a joint hearing. Mr. Terry and I are both, our committees are hosting this hearing, so our subcommittees. So Mr. Ciccio, we'll go with you. You're recognized for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you. Chairmans Whitfield and Terry, ranking members Rush and Butterfield, thank you for the opportunity to be here. The shale gas revolution and lower natural gas and feedstock costs have launched the start of the manufacturing renaissance with announced manufacturing investments of over $110 billion. This is the first wave of investment. The second wave will be from our downstream customers who will relocate to be near their suppliers and reduce their costs. The Boston Consulting Group estimates that 5 million new jobs will be created in manufacturing by 2020. Every dollar's worth of natural gas run through our manufacturing economy creates up to $8 in added value. This is a superior economic use of natural gas than exporting LNG. The $110 billion investment will also create new natural gas demand between 7 and 9 BCF a day, about an 11% increase. This is all good news. The most significant threat to the fulfillment of the manufacturing renaissance will be determined by the speed of LNG export terminal approvals and the volume of its shipments, which brings me to the key points of my testimony. Doing it right can be a win-win for producers and consumers of natural gas. Doing it wrong will result in spiking natural gas and electricity prices and an end to the manufacturing renaissance. We need to avoid what happened in Australia. IECA is not opposed to LNG exports, but warns policymakers that careless due diligence by the DOE on the public interest determination of LNG export applications to non-free trade countries is a real concern. LNG terminal approvals are for 30 years. A lot can happen in 30 years. In this regard, we are asking members of these two committees to support your natural gas consumer constituents back home by urging the DOE to do a rulemaking to establish transparent criteria for decision-making for LNG export facilities. The public trust, just as the DOE did as they dealt with LNG imports a decade ago. Domestic demand is accelerating, and LNG export demand is additive to that demand. For example, just 6 of the most likely export terminals would increase demand by 16%. The export demand would be on top of the AEO 2013 demand increase of 6% by 2020. Neither demand number includes the manufacturing renaissance of an 11% demand. Combined, this is a 33% increase. This is a huge increase in a very short time frame. And this does not include new demand that will occur from the EPA's utility MAT and EPA's greenhouse gas regulations. The public interest determination for approval of LNG exports to non-free trade countries is the law. The public interest test is really important because it is a safeguard to ensure that decisions are being made correctly and with up-to-date information. The responsibility for review of LNG export applications resides with the Department of Energy. In this regard, the DOE decision raises questions. On May 17th, in our opinion, the DOE failed in their judiciary responsibility under the Natural Gas Act in the implementation of the public interest determination for the Freeport facility. DOE cites 3 studies in approving the Freeport LNG export facility. All 3 use demand assumptions that are 2.5 years old. However, we do agree with the comments in the conclusion portion of the approval. This is a quote. The reasons in support of proceeding cautiously are several. Number 1, the LNG export study, like any study, based on assumptions and economic projections, is inherently limited in its predictive accuracy. Number 2, applications to export significant quantities of domestically produced LNG are a new phenomena with uncertain impacts. And number 3, the market for natural gas has experienced rapid reversals in the past and is again changing rapidly due to economic, technological, and regulatory developments. The market of the future very likely will not resemble the market of today, unquote. Mr. Chairman, no one in your congressional district wants higher natural gas and electricity prices. We ask for your help in this matter. Lastly, decisions on LNG export applications need to be done on a case-by-case basis and sequenced to avoid price spikes. These are not unreasonable requests. Thank you.
Mr. Ciccio, thank you. And I neglected to say who Mr. Ciccio is, but he's the president of the Industrial Energy Consumers of America, and we thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Mr. Dean Corll, who is the president and CEO of ACNS Incorporated, a chemical company, and we're delighted that you're here and you're recognized for 5 minutes, Mr. Corll.
Good morning, Chairman Whitfield and Terry, ranking members Rush and Schakowsky, and members of the Subcommittee on Commerce, Manufacturing and Trade, and of the Subcommittee on Energy and Power. Thank you very much for your leadership in holding today's joint subcommittee hearing on United States energy abundance and its tie to our manufacturing competitiveness and advantage. My name is Dean Corll, President and CEO of ACNS, a chemical manufacturing facility located in Nitro, West Virginia. Appearing on behalf of the American Chemistry Council, I am pleased to comment on the critical role that abundant and affordable oil and natural gas is playing in revitalizing the competitiveness of the U.S. chemical industry, driving enormous new investments in chemical manufacturing and creating hundreds of thousands of new jobs in the process. We are a very small company. We have over 40 employees. We started from humble beginnings back in 1988 as a rail car cleaning facility. Over the years, we have added chemical manufacturing, and today we serve the refining, pharmaceutical, and agricultural industry in producing intermediates and finished products for them. This shale gas revolution has transformed our company. We are putting steel in the ground as we speak. We're nearing completion of a new production unit, and my focus right now on growth opportunities is certainly centered in the oil and gas industry and the downstream derivatives. The U.S. chemical industry is highly energy intensive. We use energy inputs, mainly natural gas and natural gas liquids, as both our major fuel source and feedstock. About 75% of the cost of producing petrochemicals and plastics is related to the cost of energy-derived raw materials. Consequently, our ability to compete in global markets is largely determined by the price and availability of natural gas and gas liquids. The consulting firm IHS forecasts that the U.S. has a 100-year supply of natural gas. This abundant and affordable supply of natural gas has transformed the U.S. chemical industry from the world's high-cost producer 5 years ago to the world's low-cost producer today. As a result, the U.S. enjoys a decisive competitive advantage in the cost of producing basic petrochemicals. For example, it costs less than $400 a ton to produce ethylene in the United States, whereas it compares to $1,000 a ton in Europe and even more in Japan. As a result of this cost advantage, dozens of companies are making plans to invest in new U.S.-based chemical production capacity. ACC estimates that more than $72 billion in new capital expenditures will be invested in the U.S. between 2012 and 2020. Roughly half of those investments will come from firms that are based outside of the U.S. The U.S. is emerging as the place to manufacture chemicals now. The supply response from shale gas will directly create tens of thousands of new jobs in the U.S. chemical industry. Policy will play an important role if we are to optimize our competitive advantage. These policies include implementing a true all-of-the-above energy policy that enables all energy sources, including energy efficiency, to fairly compete in the market. Second, we need to keep oversight of the unconventional oil and gas production in the hands of the states. In addition, we also need to expedite permitting and construction of infrastructure needed to move that gas and gas liquids to market. In closing, I want to thank the subcommittee for the opportunity to describe how abundant and affordable quantities of natural gas and natural gas liquids are creating a manufacturing renaissance in the U.S. chemical industry. In a few short years, the U.S. chemical industry has moved from an industry in contraction to an industry facing an era of unprecedented expansion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Corll. We appreciate that. And our next witness is Ms. Phyllis Cuttino, who is the Director of the Clean Energy Program at the Pew Charitable Trust. And we thank you for being with us, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to other members of the committee. I am thrilled to be here to discuss clean energy as it relates to the energy transformation in the United States, advanced manufacturing, and our competitiveness globally. Research by the Pew Charitable Trust has shown that clean energy technologies have entered the mainstream of global energy markets. In 2012, $269 billion was invested, and clean energy deployment was a record 88 gigawatts, spurred by dramatic price declines. Companies and countries are turning to clean energy because it enhances energy security, protects the environment, and represents a tremendous economic opportunity. Indeed, there's every reason to believe that private investment will continue to grow significantly as countries prioritize clean energy. In some markets, renewable energy systems are already the cheapest and best options. Even in oil-rich Saudi Arabia, they've set a goal to obtain 30% of their electricity from solar power. The International Energy Agency predicts that clean energy technologies will provide more than half of electric generating capacity added over the next 25 years, and most forecasters expect trillions of dollars to be invested over the next several decades. In short, clean energy is a significant economic opportunity for U.S. manufacturers. But while the global future of clean energy is bright, U.S. competitiveness in the sector is cloudier. Although we lead in clean energy innovation, we are not manufacturing, deploying, or exporting these technologies as we should be. Once the clear worldwide leader, policy uncertainty in this country has had an adverse impact on U.S. standing in the sector. China now leads the world in attracting private investment, $65.1 billion in 2012. In the same year, the United States, where our investment fell to $35.6 billion. We are now in second place. Simply put, America is underperforming in the clean energy sector. Last year, Pew organized roundtables discussions in New York, in Ohio, in Colorado, in Georgia, in Mississippi, and in Washington, D.C., with clean energy industry leaders in the areas of finance, manufacturing, innovation, and deployment. They identified 3 key challenges facing the industry and 6 policies for overcoming them. These challenges are policy uncertainty. This was described as the overriding impediment to clean energy investment and progress. The boom and bust nature of U.S. clean energy programs makes it hard for companies to succeed and develop the supply chains and business models they need. International competition was second. It's a tough time for producers with fierce competition and worldwide as they have characterized every emerging sector, from automobiles to computers. But over the long term, this will result in a stronger, more efficient, and cost-competitive industry. Tight credit markets are a third challenge. While not unique to clean energy, it's difficult to raise the capital needed to grow businesses and scale up technologies. Now, Congress has numerous options for addressing these challenges and bolstering U.S. competitiveness. Our roundtable participants identified 6 priorities for you all to consider. First, set a clear, consistent, and long-term goal for the deployment of clean energy, thereby providing the certainty needed for inventors to invent, investors to invest, and manufacturers to produce. Second, support energy R&D at higher levels and continue recent initiatives like ARPA-E and energy innovation hubs in order to maintain the pipeline of ideas and innovations for driving down the cost and ratcheting up the performance of advanced energy technologies. This is critical to U.S. competitiveness. Third, renew the production and investment tax credits for a few more years. Congress has provided incentives to incumbent technologies. The 4 permanent tax incentives in the code are for oil, gas, and nuclear power. Our industry participants would welcome a multi-year but time-limited extension of clean energy tax credits to help ensure full market maturation. Fourth, level the playing field by addressing the barriers that impede industry progress. For example, pass the proposed MLT Parity Act, which would allow clean energy to qualify for the same tax treatment that is open to investments in the oil and gas infrastructure. Fifth, support manufacturing through Advanced Energy Manufacturing Tax Credit and the Department of Energy's Clean Energy Manufacturing Initiative. And finally, sixth, strengthen and expand trade promotion for exports of American-made clean energy technologies to growing and emerging markets. In conclusion, and in view of current and projected investment trends, U.S. competitiveness in clean energy warrants public and private sector priority and partnership. Mr. Chairman, policy matters. Encouraging innovation, deployment, manufacturing, and trade of clean energy technologies through policy will help ensure America capitalizes on the substantial opportunity for the nation's economic, environmental, and national security prospects. We at the Pew Charitable Trust look forward to working with you and Congress to pass these policies and realize these goals.
Thank you very much. Our next witness is Mr. Drew Greenblatt, who's the president of Marlin Steel Wire Products, and we appreciate your being with us, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. The USA has hit the lottery. This energy blessing will create a lot of jobs. This is not controversial. This should be a unifying thing for our country to get behind. My name is Drew Greenblatt. I'm the president of Marlin Steel. We're based in Baltimore, Maryland. Marlin Steel is a leading manufacturer of custom-made wire baskets, wire forms, and precision sheet metal fabrications. We make 100% in the USA in Baltimore City. We're a fast-growing company. We've grown 7 years in a row despite the recession. Matter of fact, we are number 162 of all manufacturers according to Inc. magazine. We used entirely recycled steel, and we export, and this is pretty cool, to China. We make it all in Baltimore. We use steel made in Illinois, made in Pennsylvania, and the thing I'm most proud about is that we've gone 1,650 days without a safety incident. 20% of my employees are mechanical engineers, and we succeed through innovation, investment. We have a wonderful team. I'm representing today the National Association of Manufacturers. 1 in 6 private sector jobs are in manufacturing. These are great jobs, $77,000 a year on average, including benefits, and this is much better than the average American employee makes. I bought Marlin Steel in 1998. We had $800,000 in sales and 18 workers. Last year was our most successful year ever. We had over $5 million in sales, and now we employ over 29 people. One of the primary reasons for this growth is because of domestic energy production and these lower energy prices. There's been a lot of talk about economic growth out in the shale boom in North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, but this is starting to impact and trickle down to places that are not generating oil and petroleum, places like mine. Manufacturers across the country are benefiting from these lower energy prices and this increased industrial activity. We fulfill many orders that ship to the gas industry. How has the boom helped us specifically? 2 ways. Number one, lower costs. We are paying less money for the energy to heat the factory, for example. We're paying less money for powder coating. So we're more competitive when we compete head-to-head against China, when we compete head-to-head against Japan and Germany and Canada. The second way is that it's increased our revenue, higher revenue. Higher revenue means more jobs. We're selling material handling solutions from steel wire baskets and sheet metal products to Schlumberger, Halliburton, Timken, Caterpillar. This is what's propelled our growth. We're also aware of recently President Obama visited one of our colleagues a mile away, Ellicott Dredges. They are doing great because of the boom as well. They're making dredges for the Canadian oil sands. Think about it. There's a new steel pipe plant being built in Youngstown, Ohio. When was the last time a steel mill's been built in Youngstown, Ohio? Something is going on, and it's great, and we should be embracing this. For us, what happens is we hire unemployed local steel workers. We buy more robots. One of our robot makers is in Chicago. A second one is in Connecticut. We buy our steel from Illinois, from Indiana. We buy our steel from Pennsylvania. So we're all in it together, and we're all growing together because of this wonderful fortune our nation is blessed with. In conclusion, abundant, low-cost energy is changing the landscape of the global marketplace. It's well positioning us U.S. manufacturers for years to come. We're increasing production, we're expanding our employees, we're hiring more people, and these workers are buying things, and this is having a positive ripple effect throughout the economy. With continued production and the right policies in place, U.S. manufacturers will continue to be the drivers of economic growth and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greenblatt. And our final witness today is Mr. Andre de Ruyter, who is Senior Group Executive for Sasol Limited. And thank you for being with us, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Whitfield, Chairman Terry, Ranking Member Rush, Ranking Member Scalise, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and present testimony. It's an honor. Sasol is an integrated international energy and chemicals company. We employ about 34,000 people in 38 countries worldwide. We operate large-scale fuel and chemical plants throughout the world, and we are listed on the Johannesburg and New York Stock Exchanges. We are not a stranger to the U.S. We have been doing business here for the past 20-odd years. We have headquarters based in Houston. We have also operations in that city, and furthermore operations plants in Arizona, in Louisiana, and also in the state of California. The U.S. and Louisiana in particular offer a business-friendly climate with a predictable regulatory structure. More importantly, though, the U.S. shale gas revolution has created attractive opportunities for Sasol's investment into the U.S. market. Sasol is uniquely positioned to monetize U.S. natural gas through our gas-to-liquids, or GTL, technologies. And consequently, Sasol announced in December 2012 that it was going to move forward with the next phase of investing in a world-scale ethane cracker and gas-to-liquids facility in Westlake, Louisiana. It is estimated that the combined investment comprised by these two projects will amount to between 16 and 21 billion US dollars. This will make it one of the largest foreign direct investments into manufacturing in the U.S. in history. The ethane cracker is anticipated to produce some 1.5 million metric tons of ethylene per annum, with associated downstream ethylene products produced, and the GTL plant will be producing gas-to-liquids diesel as well as associated chemical products. While natural gas is a major energy source for global power generation, it has up to now lacked the versatility to address transportation needs. With our proven GTL technology, we can fundamentally alter the chemistry of natural gas so that we can convert it to approximately 100,000 barrels per day of gas to liquids diesel for use in transportation, thereby maximizing in-country value add. And this contrasts with the technology of LNG, which essentially repackages natural gas for export to other countries as a form of energy. Unlike other alternative fuels, GTL diesel is fully fungible with conventional diesel and requires no adjustment to engine technology or to distribution infrastructure. GTL diesel's high quality makes it highly suitable for use as a blend stock by crude oil refineries to upgrade their products into high quality fuels. However, when gas to liquids diesel is used neat, it has the added benefit of leading to lower emissions of particulates and other pollutants as a result of the fact that it contains essentially zero sulfur and very low aromatic compounds. And this helps to improve air quality and meet emission mandates. Although this GTL gas to liquids facility will be the first of its kind in the US, it's important to emphasize that this is not an experimental technology. This is not new. Sasol has been manufacturing fuel using essentially the same technology for more than 60 years. And together with our partner, Qatar Petroleum, we have produced more than 45 million barrels of diesel fuel for export into the international market since the commissioning of our Oryx gas to liquids facility in Qatar in 2007. When we proceed with these projects, it will have a very substantial impact on the US economy. We anticipate that we'll create more than 1,200 direct jobs with an average annual salary of $88,000. 7,000 construction jobs will be created during peak construction, and this will in turn lead to thousands of indirect jobs. Our commitment, however, goes beyond these projects and extends into the local communities where we intend to continue to be a good neighbor and to conduct our business in a safe, socially and environmentally responsible manner. The US will also see increased tax revenues and GDP and an improved balance of trade. Sasol's US projects are a compelling example of how bilateral trade between Africa and the US can yield substantial foreign direct investment into the US, which represents a win-win for both the US and also the South African economies. And we are proud to be driving the next phase of our growth into the US. And we encourage Congress to continue to promote policies that stimulate the development of natural gas, and we really look forward to taking advantage of this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will take any questions.
Mr. DeRuda, thank you very much, and thank all of you for your testimony. We have the Farm Bill on the House floor today, and we're going to be going to vote again soon. So we're going to allocate to every member 3 minutes for questions only. And so I'd like to start my 3-minute time now. I'm going to recognize myself for 3 minutes. But on my questioning time, I'm just going to make a few comments. First of all, this is a very important hearing. We're seeing this renaissance of manufacturing in America. And we know that it's caused primarily because of low-cost energy that's come about of the shale gas and shale oil finds that we've recently had. So in order to keep this going and to address the job and the sluggish economy we have in the U.S., and I noticed today the Federal Reserve Board yesterday, I guess, said they're going to kind of stop our easy money policy. So we may see interest rates start edging up soon. So the policies that the U.S. government adopts is going to have a dramatic impact on the cost of energy. And energy costs are a key component for continuing to grow our manufacturing base and create jobs. And when we talk about that, we're talking about the regulations, we're talking about and all of the above energy policy, which many of you talked about specifically in your testimony, But I would remind everyone once again that the Obama administration says in all of the above, but they systematically are trying to eliminate some fossil fuels, particularly coal. And I noticed, I was reading the Federal Register footnotes on the proposed greenhouse gas new source performance standard for new electric generating units. And in the Register, it says the Department of Energy National Energy Technology Laboratory estimates that when that rule becomes final, that the technology that the coal industry would have to use to meet the emission standards would add 80% to the cost of electricity. That one standard, 80% increase. So we're all excited now, and we feel good about these low energy costs. But as we move forward, we have to think about the policies and the impact. Because I, for one, as many of you said in your testimony, do believe we need all of the above. Green energy alone is not going to get it done. So thank you very much for your testimony. I look forward to working with all of you as we move forward. And at this time, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, for 3 minutes.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have an incredible opportunity here to address both the threat of climate change and to secure U.S. leadership and U.S. jobs in a clean energy industry worth trillions of dollars. Today's witnesses testified about how low-cost natural gas benefits the economy and is leading to a manufacturing renaissance in the U.S. But natural gas, Mr. Chairman, is not the only domestic energy source creating good manufacturing jobs in this country. Last year, the U.S. wind industry employed more than 80,000 Americans, including more than 25,000 in manufacturing jobs. The solar industry employed more than 119,000 U.S. workers, including more than 29,000 in manufacturing sectors. Many predict that the clean energy sector will be the most important energy industry of the century. And my question is directed to Mrs. Cuttino. Mrs. Cuttino, how large is the global clean energy market, and how much is it anticipated to grow in the future?
Well, thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. Mr. Rush, most forecasters are saying that there will be between $5.9 and $7 trillion that will be invested over the next 10 to 15 years in the sector. The International Energy Agency predicts that 50% of all new capacity additions across the world are going to be renewable. Other estimates are that it's much as 70. Here in the United States, last year, 49% of the new installed capacity was renewable, 30% was gas. So together, these two things actually work very well. So I think it represents a very significant opportunity, particularly as a country that has invented these technologies and can ship and export them and sell them around the world. Thank you.
What role should federal funding for advanced energy technology development play in rebuilding America's competitive advantage in clean energy innovation, and where should we focus our investment?
Well, Mr. Rush, that's a very good question. We, in talking to clean energy leaders across the country, business leaders, have said time and time again that policy uncertainty is an impediment to their progress. It is the single largest factor that chills greater investment in deployment, export, and manufacturing. This committee has heard many times business talk about uncertainty as it relates to regulations and policy, and clean energy is no different. It's just another form of technology. So if we want to support this sector, and we should, we need to put together a long-term policy signal that will give investors the signal they need to invest, to move capital off the sidelines, and for manufacturers to scale up and produce those technologies that we can sell around the world.
Thank you. Are you back?
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Now I recognize myself for my 3 minutes. Appreciate all of you being here. Since 2008, during the Great Recession, we lost over 5 million American manufacturing jobs. We're seeing an uptick. We've had 500,000 new jobs created within the last year to 2 years, and a lot of them are in the industries that are heavy in, energy users, particularly natural gas. So it's interesting, or that's the purpose of having the hearing here. We want to see, A, is it the low cost of natural gas that's generating this resurgence in manufacturing jobs? Are there other reasons? And so I'm going to kind of flip it over, the question here, and flip it over to the other side of the coin and ask. We've had the testimony about pro-natural gas. What are the other obstacles that you've observed in your expansion within your own industry, of any barriers, speed bumps, or whatever, that maybe we can address? Mr. Ciccio, you go first, and then we'll just go from my left to right. And make it quick.
Speed bumps for energy-intensive manufacturers are many, including regulations. Regulations, for example, the industrial boiler mat, hugely expensive. Manufacturers, in terms of the next speed bump, are concerned about what happens to electricity costs as a result of EPA regulations on the electric utility sector that's forcing coal to gas. But the costs of those environmental regulations all get pushed on to us. In the future, regulations of greenhouse gases.
Mr. Cordell.
Well, just to echo the previous gentleman, I think regulations are an important part of something that we need to address. Drilling permits on federal lands, onshore and offshore, we need to make sure that those are expedited and streamlined, as well as leaving the regulations of the extraction to the states. Thank you.
Do you have anything? A little bit out of it.
Well, I would offer something positive, which is I think everyone on the panel and I would agree that one thing that our manufacturers need is support for industrial energy efficiencies such as combined heat and power or waste heat recovery. This, as you know, reduces the cost of energy, and they're installed here in America by American labor, and they spur tremendous private investment as well as making all the products more competitive around the globe. So I think that's something that this committee could certainly support, is combined heat and power industrial energy efficiency.
Mr. Greenblatt.
I agree with all the impediments that were just mentioned. Another big impediment is that it's a global economy, and we're competing against Canada, we're competing against Germany and Japan, and our tax rates are not competitive. We're in the 40-something%, 40% tax bracket, and we're competing against Canada, which is at 15%. That's hard to whoop them. We need your help to get a level playing field so we can grow jobs in Baltimore.
Mr. DeRuyter, I'm going to cut you off because my time is gone, but I'm only doing so because I know Mr. Scalise is very anxious to just talk to you. At this time, recognize the gentlelady from Illinois for her 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask you, Ms. Cuttino, there's been a lot of talk about all of the above, but in terms of federal investment, how do clean energy technologies compare to fossil fuel investments?
Well, we've seen that that certainly for incumbent technologies there are permanent tax incentives in the code. Some more than 100 years old, some more than 50 years old. By contrast, the investments or the tax incentives we've seen for clean energy technologies have been episodic at best, uncertain, and certainty is a word that everyone on this panel has said is critically important. Leveling the playing field, reducing barriers, all these issues apply for clean energy as well. So we need to have the same assurances for clean energy as we do for the incumbent energy technologies.
Thank you. I just want to use my remaining time in saying that this panel actually frightens me a bit. and the discussion frightens me a bit. There will come a time in the future history not yet written of our planet where we say, whoa, when we had an opportunity to move toward clean energy, not just for the competitiveness of the United States or for the advantages of manufacturing, but for the ability of human life to survive on our planet, that we had an opportunity to really do something about this in a significant way. The world can afford to burn, we're told, about 565 gigatons of carbon dioxide over the next 50 years before we reach 2 degrees Celsius increase and disaster that could follow. And we already have, in terms of proven coal and oil and gas reserves, about 2,795 gigatons of carbon dioxide. In other words, about 5 times as much as we can actually afford to put into the atmosphere. And I feel an obligation at this moment in history to my children and my grandchildren and future people on this planet that we need to shift toward clean energy technologies to prevent calamitous consequences in this world. So before, Mr. Greenblatt, I'm happy that you have the jobs in Illinois, and I'm happy that you embrace the idea that Ms. Cuttino talked about, that we could be more energy efficient. But this idea now, hooray, we've got all of this, this natural gas, this abundance. We can be an exporter of fossil fuels to the world. We can be an exporter, make a lot of money by developing and exporting clean technologies, which are the technologies of the 21st century, I hope. And I yield back.
Thank you. And now we recognize the Mr. Scalise. You are recognized for 3 minutes.
I'm sure you meant to say the gentleman from Louisiana, right, Mr. Chairman?
Gentleman from.
I appreciate you yielding, and let me start by saying this panel excites me. I think the fact that we're here in a committee here and in Congress talking about how technology and energy is revolutionizing our country and not only creating tens of thousands of really good high-paying jobs, which is something that we ought to be focused on every single day, but also allowing our country to be independent of energy. Here's one case where we've got the opportunity to reduce our dependence on many cases Middle Eastern countries who don't like us, where we're sending billions of dollars to countries who use that money against us to kill Americans in some cases. And so the revolution in energy is I think, one of the most important things if we want to get our economy back on track, get our country moving again, create jobs, and create the energy security I think that Americans expect and deserve. And so I think it's important that we talk about just what's happening in the real world with some of these new technologies in energy. And again, it's exciting to see what's happened. I know in my state of Louisiana, we've seen it in these shale plays, and up in Haynesville Shale, up in North Louisiana. You drive up and down the interstates, and you see trucks moving pipe, you see people working, you see very low unemployment, and we're creating American energy. And again, I mean, if we want to have an economy, if we want everybody to live in squalor and poverty, then we'd go with the old economy. If we actually want to create jobs and manufacture, make things in this country so that we can create jobs and increase everybody's lifestyle, not just in America but in other countries, it starts with energy and safe and secure energy, and that's what this is all about. And so I want to shift it over to you, Mr. DeRuyter. Following the lead from my distinguished chairman, Mr. Terry, and he knew I had a number of questions, but I want to first thank you for the commitment that you've made to Louisiana and to America, because you could have put this plant, this liquefaction plant, the cracker, in another country too. You decided to do it in America. $21 billion of investment. Those are great jobs, over 1,000 jobs. And when you see what this all can do for our country, I want to ask you about the process right now. How is it going, and are there any impediments that are placed before you in the regulatory process that Congress can help remove so that you can get these jobs created quicker, so you can create this energy in America quicker?
Thank you, Mr. Scalise. I think the two potential impediments that we see is, as some of the other panelists have remarked, is the need for regulatory certainty. We need to have a stable regulatory regime that is predictable and that we can anticipate to remain stable for the long term. Once we have that, I think we will be in a very good position to make these very large investment decisions. I think as well what would be very useful is, to the extent that we are dependent on various authorities for the granting of permits, we would like our applications, and I must stress that we're not asking for any waivers or exemptions. We intend to fully comply with all of environmental legislation, but we would like our permits to be considered and approved to the extent that they comply in an expeditious manner.
I think those are very reasonable requests, and we're fighting in this committee to try to create that certainty so that your company and so many others throughout this country can go and create those jobs and create that American energy. So thanks for what you're doing, for all of you on the panel, and I'm happy to go back to balance my time.
Thank you, Mr. Scalise, or the gentleman from Louisiana. At this time, the chair recognizes the full committee ranking member, Mr. Henry Waxman. Gentleman from California is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The United States pioneered many of the clean energy technologies being deployed around the world today. But in 2012, China attracted more clean energy investment than any other country. In the United States, private investment in the clean energy market actually fell. The clean energy technology market will be pivotal as the world moves toward a lower carbon global economy. It seems like the United States, once a leader in this market, is losing ground. Ms. Cuttino, your organization held a series of roundtable discussions with industry and experts to discuss impediments to clean energy investment in the U.S. What did these experts identify as the overriding impediment?
Well, thank you, Mr. Waxman. Their overriding concern was the policy uncertainty that they face in the current policy environment. They talked about a number of things, but that really was the biggest impediment to them being able to raise private capital, being able to scale up to manufacture, and frankly, they have said, look, energy is a place where Congress has set goals in the past.
What makes China a safer bet than the United States right now in terms of clean energy investment?
China leads the world in not only installed capacity, sir, but they also lead the world in terms of attracting private investment. America used to lead the world, frankly. We created many of these technologies, and in a study that we conducted looking at the U.S.-China trade relationship, there are clear advantages that the United States has: advanced manufacturing, innovation, while China's advantages are really low-cost assembly.
But it comes down to the uncertainty. There's a lack of consistent clean energy plan, and investors can't rely on policy to provide direction. Is that
yes, sir.
What you found? Now, in your roundtable discussions with industry, did the participants identify EPA regulations as an impediment to investment in the United States?
They did not.
What about setting a carbon cap or putting a price on carbon? Would that provide clean energy investors with greater certainty about the purpose and direction of our energy policy? What were the views on that?
That is certainly one policy that would provide certainty, sir.
That's one. What else?
One. Well, setting some kind of a clean energy or renewable energy standard, opening up private pools of capital to clean energy the way that oil and gas can capitalize on them. This is master limited partnerships or real estate investment trusts. Certainly providing longer-term tax incentives to the production tax credit or the investment tax credit, the same kind of certainty that we've given to other incumbent technologies. And then investing, frankly, in energy R&D. As you know, this country has invested significantly in defense and health, but energy R&D is woefully low.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Waxman. Now the chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, on the last comment, the carbon cap, I think, would be more certainty for clean energy because it would make incumbent energy more expensive, which is kind of what we're discussing here today, how America's energy boom has helped in manufacturing. My family's in manufacturing, and I can tell you from firsthand experience when my father walked into a Ford plant as a union operator and ended up owning his own business, the pathway to the middle class for our family and for most families is right through the manufacturing floor. I mean, we've seen it throughout. And in Kentucky, we've seen we're the #1 aluminum state in the country, and we used to be one of the top textile states in the country. And textiles in the 90s moved offshore because it was high labor intensive. Aluminum has stayed in Kentucky because it's high energy intensive. So our competitive advantage is, for the aluminum industry anyway, which is what my family's a part of, is the fact that we have cheaper energy rates. Particularly in Kentucky, it's a coal state, so I don't have coal in my district. I don't think I have a lump of coal in my district, but 94% of Kentuckians get their power from coal, and that's attracted the investment in jobs that pay $65,000 to $70,000 a year for hourly workers in the aluminum industry. And so it's very serious when we talk about raising the price of it. And I would love to see clean energy be as competitive and equalizing the tax and the incentives. That if one group gets it, I think that's a fair point to make. But raising the price of incumbent in energy to get some other type of energy to be competitive is something that would concern me. And I don't know if anybody wants to talk on specific regulations that you've dealt with. I know we are kind of in general with Mr. Terry, that you've dealt with that has actually, the EPA has done this and it's raised the cost of your energy and made you less competitive.
As a matter of fact, aluminum, about 35% of the cost of producing aluminum is the cost of electricity or energy. Relatively small changes to the price of electricity has a immediate impact on their competitiveness. And in Kentucky, for example, well, Kentucky or anywhere else, you find coal-fired power plants, you will find lots of manufacturers. Why? Because coal provides low-cost BTU power. And we compete globally with all types of companies, including companies that are owned by sovereign states. So costs are everything. And EPA regulations on these coal-fired power plants and the proposed regulations, greenhouse gas regulations on new and existing facilities are of great concern.
And I don't know companies that looked at Mexico to invest, but the difference in energy did not make up for the differences in labor. So they're able to pay people higher wages because they're driven more by energy costs than they are by labor costs. And that's anybody else have this? I've only got 7 seconds. I guess I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and we recognize Mr. McNerney, gentleman, California, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Corll, briefly, if you would, just to satisfy my curiosity, how is the natural gas mostly used? Is it used as a chemical, as a solute? Is it used to create heat through burning, or is it used to create electricity? Just curiosity. So if you give a brief answer, I'd appreciate it.
In two primary ways. We use natural gas to fire our steam boilers in our chemical production facility.
Right.
And the overall lowering of that cost has certainly helped us dramatically. In the overall chemical manufacturing industry, it's a raw material. It's a ingredient in what we make in terms of our products.
So is that where most of the natural gas is used, as an ingredient in the product?
Well, the natural gas, when it comes out of the ground, it has several components. It has ethane, propane, and a few other things. And the ethane is the key raw material that is cracked and turned into ethylene, ethylene oxide, and then eventually it comes into polyethylene in the plastics that we use every day.
Thank you. Ms. Cuttino, I'm very sympathetic to your comment about predictability. I was in the industry for many years, and I saw boom and bust cycles because of the production tax credit and so on. We'd lay off people, and our suppliers would go away, and you'd have to rebuild every cycle, all your suppliers. It's very difficult. So I sympathize with that. I think we need to be sensitive to that here in the committee. Could you tell me what advantages, what policy advantages that the fossil fuel industry has that the renewable industry does not have?
Certainly. A couple of things. One, they have enjoyed the benefits of permanent tax breaks or tax incentives in the tax code.
Specifically?
Specifically,
what
oil and
tax
gas.
Breaks?
Tax incentives for oil and gas has been more than 100 years, for nuclear power.
What do the incentives look like? What specifically do the incentives look like?
In total, more than $500 billion,
no, I mean, or
what some estimates have been.
What do they look? What form do they take? What do the incentives look like?
They take the form of tax incentives.
Right. Are
Sorry.
they production tax incentives or are they depletion?
Yes, I'm sorry, for exploration, for extraction, yes.
Andre de Ruyter, on the GTL process, what's the energy balance of the GTL liquids? That is energy in your product divided by energy into the process and energy in the natural gas. What's the balance look like?
Thank you. So we use about 9.5 BCF per day to produce 100,000 barrels of diesel per day. So you could work out the balance from that.
So you don't have a number, a balanced number on top of your head.
It's a ratio between
right.
gas in, natural gas in, and diesel out on the other side of the process.
Plus energy into the process.
Yes, well, that includes the consumption of energy in the process itself.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I've ran over already.
Thank you. Now the chair recognizes the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. McKinley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got, in 3 minutes, we're going to have to run pretty quickly through this, but Ms. Cuttino, just quickly with the question to you was, and I like your comments about the clean energy technology and research, and you know with National Energy Technology Laboratories, they've been very focused on trying to make that accomplished, but yet you're aware that their research budget was cut by 41%. So when the President did that, would you agree with that?
I think that it's our opinion and the opinion of many studies.
It's really yes or no. Would you agree with the President to slash research into R&D on fossil fuels?
On fossil fuels or on clean energy? We think that the R&D budget should be increased.
I'm going to take that as a no. Mr. Ciccio, let's if we could run down with you quickly with this. In the 112th Congress, the EPA continually talked about during their hearings that they thought that more regulations were actually going to help the manufacturing industry, and they suggested that for every $1 million spent in higher and more comprehensive regulations, for each million it created 1.5 jobs. Would you agree that there are 1.5 jobs created for every $1 million in new regulation?
No, and I don't think any manufacturer would.
Mr. Cordell, would you? What are your thoughts?
No, I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay. From yours, from Martin Steele?
It would be a big job loser.
Thank you. How about from Sasol?
No, I can't support that statement.
I'm sorry?
I cannot support that statement that it will create more jobs.
Okay. But back also in uncertainty, we were trying to find a level of certainty. I agree. As a small business owner myself, we were always searching for that. But now we have the issue of Obamacare coming upon us in our manufacturing. And Mr. Cordell, with 40 employees, you're faced with, if you cross over 50, you're going to be meeting new guidelines or new requirements. How is your company adjusting to Obamacare?
Well, certainly the cost of health care has gotten to the point where it's been very difficult to make ends meet. I think right now a family plan costs over $3,000, and our company carries about 80% of that on behalf of the employee. And we've been seeing anywhere from 10 to 30% increases on an annual basis. I met last week with our insurance company for our union side. We employ steelworkers, and they're frustrated because they don't even have the rates for the exchanges.
Weren't we told it was going to decrease insurance costs?
Well, I don't know how that relates to Obamacare, Mr. Congressman, but I can just tell you from my experience that health care costs in general have become very difficult on a small business.
My time's expired. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland for his 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the panel. I want to acknowledge Drew Greenblatt, who has a very successful business that he's described in Baltimore, and we're very proud of the work he's done in manufacturing. There's a lot of issues that are packed in here, and of course we have less time than usual to address them all, but the boom in natural gas exploration and production, of course, is presented as a real opportunity. everything's relative when it comes to energy and the impact it has on our economy and on our public health and so forth. So I had embraced the idea that natural gas is an important bridge from traditional fossil fuels, so dirtier fossil fuels, towards a clean energy, renewable energy future. The challenge is that the boom has produced now a scenario that is being embraced by many, that this is sort of the end of our problems, that it will allow for ultimate energy independence for the country, and we may be less motivated to get across that bridge now to the other side in terms of a renewable energy portfolio and future. So I think that's where some of the anxiety from the boom comes from. Having said that, I certainly appreciate that the manufacturing sector sees a real benefit in the lower prices that are being generated from this, and maybe as between having those prices increase because we turn to an export strategy for that versus having them increase maybe because we move to some better way of capturing the impact of that on our environment, or we put more safety standards in place with respect to the industry. I guess most would choose the former. But let me ask you, Mr. Greenblatt, you're certainly benefiting from the natural gas boom and the impact that's having, but I would imagine you also, over the long term, aspire to take advantage of clean energy and renewable energy opportunities that may be able to be sort of inputted into your operation. Maybe the pricing isn't there yet, but you're innovative enough and creative that I imagine you've got that on the horizon. I thought you might want to talk about that for a second.
We've explored it. It's something we would love to do. We've looked at putting solar panels on our roof. The math isn't there yet. It would be a wonderful thing for it to occur, but we're not there yet.
And my hope, as I yield back my time, is that we can strike the right balance so that it's cost effective to pursue a number of these different opportunities, and that we can safeguard, as I said, public health and other concerns that we have. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move quickly here because I've got several topics I'd like to address. Mr. Ciccio, I noticed that you have a list of new projects listed in your testimony that could be at risk if the U.S. approves applications to export liquid natural gas to non-free trade agreement countries. I was surprised by some of these companies that you listed, but one in particular caught my eye, and that is the Valoric and Mannesmann factory, or V&M Star expansion in Youngstown, Ohio. So my first question is, do you know what they make there?
Of course.
Okay. They make the very steel and the tubes that's going to be used to transport liquid natural gas to market. They're going to benefit from the exporting of liquid natural gas. Why would you suggest that they're going to be hurt by the exporting of liquid natural gas?
Well, my testimony is, I guess, is not clear enough, but it says we are not opposing exports. It's how the DOE proceeds.
No, but why do you list that company as one that's going to be hurt by the exporting of liquid natural gas?
Because if you export a lot of natural gas, it increases the price of domestic natural gas and electricity.
But the companies that make the materials that export the natural gas, they're going to benefit from this. Let me move on, because I don't want to get into a debate here. We have a fundamental disagreement. Let me ask you this: you list a number of chemical projects that will actually benefit from increased natural gas production. In your testimony, a recent ICF study projected that employment in the chemical sector would actually increase with LNG exports due to the need to process greater natural gas liquids. Do you agree or disagree with the ICF study conclusions? You disagree?
We do.
Okay. There are a lot of ethane cracker plants being planned all across the country. If all of the cracker plants get built, wouldn't the rest of the natural gas users see increased prices for natural gas and ethane?
If there's increased production of ethane, it doesn't necessarily, you will get residual increases in supply of natural gas, but not necessarily higher prices.
I'll take that as a yes. You know, there's a limit. There's nearly an almost limitless supply of natural gas if the federal government doesn't mess up the opportunity, and from a manufacturing perspective, if we aren't forced to use gas for power generation instead of cheaper coal. You mentioned that a little earlier. I would just suggest that your time and the time of your members would be better spent helping us make sure that the administration doesn't stamp out the coal industry, which is the most cost-affordable, reliable form of energy on the planet. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And at this time, I ask a unanimous consent that each side has one more set of questions, so the next person on both sides will be the last. Then we'll close, gavel the hearing.
Could I amend that and let the two, like 6 people?
What's that? One more each side. And unfortunately, you got beat out by one, Gene. Unless Ms. Matsui wants to split it with you.
No, I don't want to take Doris's time, but I also know that some of us have been here, and obviously it's an important panel.
Well,
so.
the option...
Chairman, I object to the unanimous.
Okay, then the alternative is we will come back at 2:30.
Well, let's go with the questions and see if we can get it done.
Oh, all right. Ms. Matsui, recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the witnesses for being here today. As we continue the broader debate on energy exports, we must not overlook clean energy technologies and the strong role they'll play in transitioning our country to a clean energy economy, mitigating climate change, and strengthening our national security. While exporting LNG is certainly an issue worth delving further into, I want to ensure that it is just one piece of a larger export strategy, a strategy that also includes clean energy technology exports. My home district of Sacramento is home to over 220 clean technology companies, many of which are small and medium-sized, who are exploring ways to expand their businesses by exporting their products to foreign markets. However, unlike large companies, small businesses simply do not have the resources, time, and manpower to effectively promote their products abroad. They need proper assistance to compete in the international marketplace. To this end, I've introduced the Clean Energy Technology Manufacturing and Export Assistance Act. This legislation would create an export assistance fund to help clean technology manufacturers navigate foreign markets. Additionally, it would develop and implement a national clean energy technology export strategy. Ms. Cuttino, including your testimony, is policy recommendations to expand markets to U.S. clean energy goods and services. Do you believe developing a national clean energy technology export strategy would help achieve this goal? And what do you believe are factors that should be considered in any sort of export strategy, and why?
I absolutely think we ought to have a national strategy to export clean energy goods. Mr. Scalise earlier talked about American-made energy and Saudi Arabia or countries in the Middle East. We can export to these countries. Saudi Arabia is going to spend $100 billion on solar, and they ought to buy American-made solar. So there's a huge opportunity to do that, and I think any strategy ought to be to open up markets and to ensure that small businesses have access, the same access that large businesses do.
Okay, thank you. So do our international competitors help their small and medium-sized clean tech businesses facilitate exports to the United States?
Yes, they do.
Okay. How can U.S. clean energy exports benefit the quality of life for people in emerging economies?
Well, 1/3 of the world's population is without electricity, and we're seeing a very aggressive push in many areas around the world. Distributed energy is already the best and cheapest option in many of these locations. We know that there's going to be a compound growth in areas of Africa, Latin America, and Asia in terms of energy growth and clean energy investment. So we should be there and exporting to those emerging markets.
Okay, thank you, and I think I'd yield back whatever I have.
Thank you. At this time, Chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Ciccio, emerging reports from nonpartisan think tanks like BPC and Brookings are talking about and suggesting that domestic natural gas prices that will drive exports and not exports driving natural gas prices. So it's actually that the natural gas prices will drive exports, not exports, driving natural gas prices. Do you agree with that?
Well, low natural gas prices relative to foreign markets, yes, will drive exports, of course.
So Mr. De Ruyter, you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, very good. So I think just want to get that cleared up, and then I would yield my time to Mr. Olson.
I thank my colleague from Colorado, and welcome to the witnesses. I'm with a short time that I'm going to attempt to curb my instincts as a Texan and brag about the Lone Star State. But here goes. I represent a suburban Houston district. We have 125 companies operating in the refining and petrochemical industries in Houston. The region is expecting $35 billion with a B dollars in new capital investment over the next 3 years. The construction from these investments will create over 100,000 jobs and contribute over $800 million in taxes. Those are big numbers, even for Texans. I have a few questions about cheap natural gas bringing competitors, foreign companies, to our soil. And Mr. Greenblatt, I'm thrilled to hear about the growth of your company in Baltimore because of increased shale gas production. And I'm wondering how to bring your business to Texas. But I love the fact, too, that you're exporting to China. Do you think every of your foreign competitors, maybe one from China, will come bring their operations to the United States due to lower energy costs and probably some favorable tax treatments from the home countries?
Yeah, I think lower energy costs is going to be a boon to, is going to create a boom in foreign direct investment. I think many companies will reposition and look at the globe and think of us differently and in a very positive way because our cheap energy prices.
Thank you. One more for Mr. Cordell. Sir, could you discuss in a little bit of detail here with the limited time what the shale revolution means for foreign manufacturing investment here in the United States? Foreigners come to our country to manufacture.
Certainly. It's been a tremendous increase in investment in the United States. I believe BAS and Total are investing in your state, in Port Arthur. It's a $1 billion project. And we've had almost $70+ billion in capital announcements in the last couple of years. This really is a game changer. Never before has the competitive playing field been tilted in our favor. It's always been the other way, and we need to put in the policies that will ensure that this is a long-lived, it's real, it's here, and we appreciate what you're doing today and the rest of the committee regarding this issue.
I'm out of time. One final comment. Go Spurs!
Object. Gentleman from Texas, another prideful Texan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And unlike my neighbor and colleague, it doesn't take a Texan too much time to brag about Texas. But let me, I represent a district in Houston and area, and it one time had the largest petrochemical complex in the country. And every one of our chemical plants in our district in East Harris County are announcing expansions. And I know on the list that Mr. Ciccio was one of them, Petrologistics, that took a mothballed chemical plant in our district and because of the propane coming off the Eagle Ford. And they were serving literally the market in the Houston area, but last year they contacted me and wanted to know what they could do, get a carbon permit, because state's not issuing them in Texas. They have to go to EPA because they wanted to double their capacity and get in the international market. So we're seeing that literally all over the petrochemical complexes from Mississippi River down to Corpus Christi, Texas. So, and let me, I know my ranking member, Mr. Waxman, I know China's expanding on their greener energy production, but they're also, they in India are building 76% of the coal plants in the world. So China's doing everything. They are somewhat free enterprise, but we also know they're a command economy. And so they can do things that we have to deal with, typically with free market or with government assistance on a limited basis. Although some of my plants think the EPA orders them around, but we do know there's an appeals process for that, and in China there may not be that. Some of the questions, Mr. Corll, are you seeing similar expansion in West Virginia like I'm seeing in East Harris County?
Not to the scale that you're saying, but we are very hopeful. We're working very hard as a state and an industry to attract foreign and domestic investments in the region of Kanawha River Valley. As you know, we have a rich tradition in chemical manufacturing.
Yeah. I noticed, in fact, I got to visit some of the plants, chemical plants along the Ohio River, both in Ohio and in West Virginia. You mentioned that supply response for shale gas has directly created 46,000 jobs in the chemical industry due to expanded chemical production. What's the average salary for those jobs?
I believe we're around $77,000, $78,000 for those jobs, for the chemical operator
must be nationwide, because I know in my area, our work source talks about the average salary is about $86,000 for those chemical plant jobs and refinery plant jobs, because they're also expanding. What policies are needed to maintain the long-term low-cost energy advantage? Now, I understand that, I have that industrial complex but I also have a lot of service companies who actually continue to work Eagle Ford and all over the country, literally. But for example, is the federal government made it difficult to use hydrofracking? What would that mean to some of your businesses?
In terms of hydraulic fracturing, I think the states are best suited to handle the regulation of that activity on the extraction side.
All right. Okay. I know are we close to the time? Mr. Reuter, one last question. You talked about the length of the gas, the liquids facility that you're building in Louisiana. You also talked about Sasol currently operating with to estimate are you estimating your greenhouse gas savings associated with blending GTL diesel in U.S. refineries? Has GTL technology ever been used here, and would our refineries have to add or update their equipment to handle it?
No, the refineries would not have to update or change their equipment. They can use it straight as a blend stock, and in fact it would improve the quality of traditional crude-derived diesel by blending in gas to liquids diesel.
Has it ever been used in the United States?
Yes, we have in fact exported diesel to the U.S., and we have also supplied GTL jet fuel to the Department of Defense, who uses it for experimental purposes.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chairman,
Mr. Green. You have to stay. I have unanimous consent request to submit an article from E&E on Exelon blame subsidized wind markets article. Hearing none, so ordered. Now your job is done. I want to thank all of our panel here. All of you were awesome, and your testimony and very informative. Members have 10 days to submit their questions. Panel, I would appreciate if we submit questions to you that you answer them within a timely manner. Timely is not several months. With that, we are adjourned.